I believe Guam can and should shape its future instead of just absorbing whatever comes. But it's important, and this is where I'm taking a leap of faith. But I believe that we can only do better if we send someone who knows how to actually get things done. And I believe with my experience, I know how to get things done. I certainly know how to work it, or at least to give it my darn best.
Alpha Day, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson, and welcome to another edition of the Innovate Guam Podcast where we explore all things innovation, technology, and improvement related to the island of Guam. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Substack. My podcasts drop at the beginning of each week. Also, be sure to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of each month. Our guest for today's episode is former Senator Mary Camacho Torres. Senator Torres is a former Guam senator, former public agency executive, community leader, wife, mother, and proud Nana. She is currently running to serve as Guam's delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, with a campaign focused on affordability, safety, opportunity, and giving Guam a stronger voice in Washington, D.C. Senator Torres is the daughter of former Governor Carlos Camacho and former First Lady Lourdes Camacho, and she comes from a family where public service has been a lifelong responsibility. She is a practical, results-focused leader who served 4 terms in the Guam legislature and helped author nearly 40 laws, including measures focused on small business tax relief, paid parental leave, foster care, and protections for survivors of violence. Before elected office, Senator Torres helped lead several of Guam's most important public institutions, including the Port Authority of Guam, the Guam International Airport Authority, and the Guam Visitors Bureau, giving her firsthand experience with shipping, air transportation, tourism, infrastructure, and how federal decisions directly impact Guam's families and businesses. And today, we're going to talk about her story, why she's running for Congress, and her vision for Guam, and how Guam can think bigger about economic diversification. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you former Senator Mary Camacho Torres. Senator, welcome to the podcast.
Alpha Day, and thank you.
Oh, it's so outstanding to have you on the podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. So we have a tradition here on the Innovate Guam podcast. I ask all of my guests the same first icebreaker question. And that question is, what is your definition of innovation, and what does innovation mean to you personally?
Well, for me, innovation isn't about gadgets or newest technology. On an island like Guam, innovation is what our people have always done, making more out of less and finding smarter ways when the easy way isn't available to us. That's innovation, much what our ancestors did by navigating the stars, and the oceans. So to me, it's really progress with a purpose, solving real problems for real families in a way that fits who we are. And on Guam, the purpose is always our people.
Yeah, I love that. The focus, the purpose on the people. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you've served Guam in several different ways. You've been a senator, public agency leader, community advocate. What's the one leadership lesson that Guam has taught you that still guides you today?
What I believe is a unique Guam lesson is Inafat Maulik. And we say it
Mm,
so often that it almost sounds like a slogan, but it's actually the most practical leadership lesson that I know. And that is that with the Nathamalik, we take care of one another.
yes,
It's about my well-being is tied to yours. And in government, that um, basically the work isn't. And when I ran the Port Authority and the Airport and the Visitors Bureau in the legislature, the question was never about, what it means for me or how it's going to advance myself or, my stature. It always comes down to the question of, does this make life better for the family? The family in Jigo, the business owner in Agana, even the fisherman or the sustainable farmer in Maritzo. Um,
right.
so in Nafamalik and Guam, it taught me that, leadership is true stewardship. And what we hold in positions of leadership is something that belongs to the people. And whatever we do, we have to be sure that it makes life better for the people, better than the way you found it.
Yeah, makes life better for the people. I
Yeah.
love that. If you could describe the Guam that you want to leave to your grandchildren, you know, in one word or one phrase, what would it be and why?
For my grandchildren, and this is very real to me because I have 11 of them, and the youngest is 5
Wow.
and the eldest is 21. So it's a very real dilemma for me. I would say I'd want to describe Guam as rooted and ready. That Guam is home. We're rooted in Chamorro culture, in our language, in our values, our respect for family, all the things that we grew up with, and mostly our love for the island. But also that aside, you have to be ready for the future, right? Ready with good jobs and strong school systems and a reliable
Yes.
infrastructure. Making sure that they're ready to have affordable homes that they can live in one day, and opportunities that allow them to stay here and build their lives here. So that's the Guam that I want for my grandchildren, and it's really what propels me to seek public office and continue um, to stay in the political realm.
Yes, yes. All great answers. So let's shift gears and get into the main um, uh, interview questions and really get to the heart of, your story. Let's find out who Mary Camacho Torres is, and what it was like growing up on Guam for you, and how that shaped how your upbringing shaped your path into public service. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal story, um, and how it relates to Guam?
Yeah, it's a little hard because on Guam we tend to be shy and we don't like to boast about ourselves, right? So I'll start off by saying that I'm a true daughter of Guam, born and raised here. I now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a wife of 47 years, if you can believe it, a mother to 3, and I have 11 grandchildren. But mostly I'm someone who believes very deeply in public service. I grew up in a household where service wasn't talked about as a career. It was really our way of life. It was the air that we breathed in the household. But what shaped me the most wasn't, and I had parents that were well accomplished, but what shaped me the most wasn't the titles they carried, but it was watching how they treated people. The compassion
Mm,
and the respect that they showed everyone, no matter what their stature was in life. And growing up here in Guam, it was a very simple life. It was not developed until about the 70s when things started to change. It was a very sleepy, quiet island, rooted in faith, family, and community. And we all knew growing up that you're part of something bigger than yourself.
mm,
You part of a family, you were part of a village, you were the
mm.
daughter of the whole island.
Yes.
Eventually, I went on to find my own path, and I worked in different areas in the private sector and public service, with different agencies. And those experiences gave me a very practical understanding of of how Guam works, from the inside out. And throughout life, I've experienced as a young bride and mother, I experienced the same challenges that many families have gone through. Um, and in my professional career, I've also seen how federal decisions that affect shipping, healthcare, infrastructure really impact our cost of living. At the same time, I've our resilience, our worth ethic, our generosity, and our ability to come together as an island, especially when it mattered the most.
Yeah, so you alluded a little bit to it in your family background, and your family is deeply rooted and deeply connected in public service with your father being a former governor. Did that ever
Mhm.
make you feel any pressure that you had to go into quote unquote the family business, or you were expected to play a certain kind of role, um, different from
Mhm.
maybe your classmates or your colleagues growing up?
Not necessarily. And the funny thing is, my father always encouraged me to be a librarian. He always said, "Oh, you'd be a great librarian." And I'd say, "Why a librarian?" And then I understood that perhaps it was because I was an only daughter. I had six brothers, and I was the only daughter. So maybe he felt that was a safe place for me. So there was no pressure to go into politics. But like I said, it was just the way things were. And but my parents, being very compassionate and leaders in their own right. um, my dad always had this phrase when I was growing up. He'd always, and I think it was the compassion that he was teaching me. He'd always say, Mary, if you see it, then just do something, step in. Like, don't turn a blind eye, or don't
Mm,
shy away from anything. So that was kind of the atmosphere that I grew up in, and that's why um, going into politics, it wasn't riding on the coattails of my father, or even my brother, because my father also passed away when I was 18 years old. So I didn't grow up,
mm,
I wasn't in my adult years, I didn't have that mentorship. So whatever it was that brought me to this place in life, it was part of my early upbringing. But of course, what happened, as a young adult, or as an adult when I went into politics, even as a young adult when I was in um, school, and going into student council, or running for class officer or something. um, those were all things that I guess just the environment, when you're with people that do certain things, you kind of, it's just a natural impulse. It's not
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you kind of alluded to it, right? That you maybe it was a little bit of pressure or challenge to find your own path, right? So, can you talk a little bit about how you found your own path and how you crafted your own leadership identity, separate from your family, or maybe rooted in a
Mhm.
tradition of your family's public leadership?
Well, when I was working, my career started after college. I helped my husband stand up his law office, and when you're in a law office, it's a very humbling experience, because you see people at their best. My husband was a business and tax lawyer, and I did a lot of estate work with him, helping him with work with clients, and help generate a lot of the documents, and all of that. um, Worked as his office manager. But you see the best and the worst of life in that situation. You see
Yes.
opportunity, you see how you really have to fix things, like find ways to fix things to save people's lives from crashing. But what I saw during that experience, and what really grounded me as an adult, was no matter what circumstances were for people, no matter how low they were, or they'd gotten themselves into, there was always someone at the end of the day that loved them. It was
Mm,
kids coming, or their parents, or their spouses. They had dignity and value to someone, and I
yes.
never lost sight of that. And so, going from the law office and then into the government where I visitors bureau and the port authority and the airport, um, I took that same love of people and value of people to help build those agencies, to help make those very effective. Because at that point, when you understand people's worth and you give them the dignity of doing their jobs to the best of their capability, right? You empower people, and things naturally
Yes.
come together. And that was sort of my style. It's like I will be, I guess you would call it maybe a foot general. We'll go in this together. We're all going to be in this together, but I'm going to be right there with you. Um, and I'm going to hold you up, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to protect you. And that's what I did. And then in the legislature as well, it was this idea that, what is it about our lives? People would often say to me, "Oh my God, these laws are just terrible. It's really getting in the way." And I'd say, "But you can change laws. You can make laws.
Yes.
You can change laws. You can." So what is it about the law that we need to change to make it better?
Yes.
And that was always my approach. So it was always from a place of practicality, right? And I guess it speaks to your innovation. Like, what do you do to make things better? What is it that you work with within your environment and um, your capabilities? What resources you have? What can you do collectively to make things better? Always been
Right.
my approach. So I went into policymaking for that reason. After I got out of the government, it was or those agencies. It was, so what do we do to make life better? And what role can
I
I play?
love the way I love the way that you describe your leadership style, very participatory
Mhm.
type of leadership. And it reminds me of an old boss of mine who characterized his leadership style as let me be your pulling guard. So
Mhm.
just like the football analogy, right? I'm your
Mhm.
pulling guard. My job is to come around that right side and clear a
Yeah.
hole for you so that you can score the touchdown, so that you can throw the game-winning pass. Let me be your pulling guard. Come around that right side and clear out the obstacles so that you can be successful. So I
Mhm.
really love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's get to the $64,000 question, right? The big question of the day is why are you running to be Guam's delegate to Congress? And it's most notable that you're running as a Republican against a incumbent Republican who's currently the delegate to Congress representing Guam. Why and why now?
Why? I see
Yeah.
that need. I see that need. I'm running because I feel that Guam has a stronger voice with a clearer vision in Washington. I mentioned before, Guam is being shaped by decisions that are made 8,000 miles away. And
Yes.
we deserve someone in that room who actually understands how those decisions land here at home. I spent my career at the intersection of federal policy and local reality, right at the Port Authority,
Mm,
where more than 90% of everything we eat and use comes through. And then at the airport
mm.
and at the Visitors Bureau and in the legislature making policy. So I've seen what happens when Washington moves and Guam isn't ready. And I've also seen
Mm,
what's possible when we are ready. You know, right now, our families are feeling squeezed. We're feeling the pressures of the high cost of living, um, shipping costs, power bills, our housing costs. But what is really gripping me right now is our young people are leaving. So many of my graduates,
yes.
when we have lunch and dinner, they're like, "Oh, my kids won't come home. Oh, they're pressuring me to leave island." And right now the buildup is reshaping our island, whether we're at the table or not. And
Right.
I've decided to run now because I believe Guam can and should shape its future instead of just absorbing whatever comes. But it's important, and this is where I'm taking a leap of faith. But I believe that we can only do better if we send someone who knows how to actually get things done. And I believe with my experience, I know how to get things done. I certainly know how to work it, or at least to give it my darn best, which is what I
So
always do.
yeah, so let's get a little bit deeper into what you're talking about. You're talking about all of those topics of, a stronger voice to drive um, affordability or and address affordability issues, opportunity issues, decision making that's happening 8,000 miles away. But can you talk a little bit more in detail about what a stronger voice actually looks like in practical terms? What would you do, and what does it look like you representing us in Washington, D.C., versus anything that we've had before?
Okay. So what that means, a stronger voice, the catch-all is it's rooted in being prepared, in being present, and in being effective. So
Mm,
in practical terms, DC arena, it will mean showing up to committee markups where the real decisions are made.
yes.
It will mean building relationships across the aisles so that when Guam needs something, you've already done the work ahead of time.
Mm, yes.
It means writing legislation that moves, not just press releases, but legislation with wheels, with teeth. Um, when I authored laws in the legislature, I learned right away, and we were in the minority at that point. The whole time I was there, we were in the minority. We had, no committees, very little budget, very little staff. And I learned right away that you don't win by grandstanding. You win by knowing the process cold. You got to do your homework and be someone that your colleagues can trust. Someone that comes prepared is that person. It's like, do you have anything? Do you have anything to show for what you're saying? What is it about you? Um, that stronger voice for Guam is one that the people in Washington will actually listen to. Because, for example, if I am serious, I come prepared and I deliver, that will be
Yes.
that will be the stronger voice. And so that's what I mean by stronger. It's like you come ready, you come prepared, and you know who to talk to, and you most especially talk. Get that point across when there's a comment made or when there's an opportunity to on the record make that point known. You put it down in record. You don't shy away or cower, because that you've got that one shot, and that's our and that can be our greatest strength.
Yes. Yes. And as you pointed out, it requires a very special skill set
Mhm.
from an individual because Guam's delegate doesn't have a final floor vote.
Mhm.
You can't vote on things. So it's really about being able to build relationships, like you said, being prepared, knowing the process, knowing the players, and a set of soft skills to influence people without having a vote. So it really takes a special kind of individual to succeed in that kind of environment. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, we met back in April at the Conference on Island Sustainability, and I really enjoyed my talk with you. Um, I what really stood out to you at that conference? Because there's a lot of talk about what we can do to innovate through sustainability. What was one of the big themes or big ideas that jumped out at you during that conference?
What struck me the most was the energy, a great
Mm,
lineup of people. Um, this year's theme was illuminating the path to prosperity. And we could just feel that people at that point were done just naming problems and talking, and they were getting ready to talk about solutions. Um, gosh, there were over 1,000 people, researchers, students, folks from across the Pacific,
Yes.
were all in one place. And
Yes.
and then this was just on the heels of Typhoon Seleka, the super typhoon.
Yes.
Sinlaku Seleka. I always say it's Sinleka because that's how I was taught the correct Kusraya pronunciation. But there was real seriousness to that session. But what struck me the most was the talent right here at home, right? Our young people.
Oh,
We
yes.
in
Oh,
Hawaii.
yes.
Yeah. And the young people,
Yes.
very young people from the Hawaii, I don't know, school, high school, students also from Micronesia, um, researchers, the Sea Grant team. We don't have to import brilliance to our region, doing it. And the challenge then for us is to make sure that we have reason to stay and build that future here on Guam.
Yes, absolutely. Was there any one idea or talk that you remember that really got in you such that it drove you to say, I can see how I could take this and bring it to DC and drive legislation or policy change through the office that I'm seeking right now?
There was just this confidence in the room, people that clearly had a command of their region, their needs, solutions going forward. That was the energy that I mean. And we can't second guess ourselves as a people because we've survived. We're thought to be thousands of years old, our society here on Guam. Um,
Yes,
we we have what it takes to thrive, and we've survived through all kinds of setbacks, whether it was natural, man-made, war infringing on our shores. Um, so we have what it takes, and it's harnessing that energy, right? The people, we always say in Chamorro, you cannot, at some point you can depend on somebody, but it's really it's all up to us. It's all about us. It's up to you. So that's what I took from it. And that's why this idea of just sitting back and being passive, this passivity is what's always killed us. Nice, polite, calm, very accommodating and generous people in the islands. Um, but we're not passive to the point where we forget who we are and we forget what feels right for us, right? And that's I think what we're going to bring to DC going forward is, notwithstanding all the things we understand are important for our region, and we're not going to necessarily say everybody go away and we want to live by ourselves. We know that that's an ideal, but far from a reality. But
yes,
there can be a stronger balance, and that's what Inafat Maulik is. What is that balance where what works for you works for me? I consider your need, you consider my needs, and we find solutions together. That's what I saw
yes,
from
ma'am.
this study. It's not all for one and one for all. It's we are one Guam, and one Guam that makes our visitors, our visita, our visitors, our people that come through, our island residents, feel that Guam is a place that has something for all of them, and there's good energy coming out of Guam. We just gotta make that one love, and
Yes, ma'am.
work it in a smart way, right, Rob? Not
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
patronize,
ma'am.
and just what is enough at Malik? What is it going to take for us to get to that point? So that's what
Yes,
I mean.
yes.
Don't forget enough at Malik.
Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and shift gears and turn our attention to diversifying Guam's economy. All right. So we all know that Guam has benefited hugely from the military buildup. But the real big question that I've been talking a lot about on this podcast forum, as well as in my writing and speaking elsewhere, has been about what happens after the buildup, right? How do we avoid constant boom and bust cycles here at Guam? And how do we make Guam a place where we just don't host military forces, but we actually have a place where we produce capabilities that we can provide to not just the military, but eventually commercial markets or whatever. How do we do that so that 7 to 9 years from now, we're not going through a bust cycle because all of that buildup money isn't coming into the economy anymore?
Yeah, I think this is $1 million question that's keeping us all up at night, right? We've
Mhm.
seen this movie before on Guam. The money comes in, there's a construction boom, then it slows, and wondering what's next. This
Yeah.
buildup, we can't take for granted that this buildup is a tremendous opportunity. But if all we do is write it down, we failed our children. The way that you avoid boom and bust, we can all agree, is to use this boom to build something durable, right? Turning temporary construction into permanent capability. We really should use this moment to build industries that outlast the buildup.
Yes.
Maritime services,
Yes.
looking at repair and maintenance for this naval Seventh Fleet that is, one of the most remarkable fleets in the history of the United
Yes.
States. Logistics, creating a trained local workforce that's still here and still in demand after the cranes come down. The buildup should be the foundation. We can have a sustainable industry going forward. And that's what we have to do. It shouldn't be, a here and go, like, you build it and then there's nothing to really sustain it, right? The money's dried up and all of the supportive industry is elsewhere. But
Absolutely.
you have to build that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I've talked a lot about a vision of building a defense sustainment ecosystem here in Guam so that not just the infrastructure and the facilities that were built up during the construction bill, but going further than that, the weapon systems, the equipment, the vehicles, the ships, the aircraft, the war readiness material that we can have uh, companies in industry on Guam that actually um, sustains that maintenance, repair, logistics, those kind of capabilities for the equipment, the weapon systems, the infrastructure, and the facilities that the military is using, not just building up um, new facilities and infrastructure. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we have to clearly start with what we have as an advantage here. Um, one, maritime and logistics. We're the westernmost U.S. port, right? The tip of the spear in the Indo-Pacific. Um,
Yes,
two, we have to look at defense sustainment, right? Not just hosting the military, but servicing it, repair, maintenance, support. And also our visitor industry, we have to make smarter and more resilient than before. There are all the other industries that we have to hone up on just to make us sustainable going forward, right? Healthcare, creating that local talent pipeline, because
yes,
you can't grow uh, an economy if your own people keep leaving, right?
yes,
So
yes,
workforce is so critical. Um, so you bring up you brought up a good point, but it all has to happen with us training and keeping our own people here, right? Because without we can't we may want to chase down every new industry, but we have to build the strength has to be here in Guam, where there's real and lasting advantage for us.
yes, yes. So, what do you think? How do we do that? How do we get the right players in the room to one, construct a common vision for the future, and two, get buy-in for that common vision, and then three, make the required investments, particularly in workforce development, ahead of the vision even coming to reality. Because a lot of people talk about, is it the chicken or the egg? And
Mhm.
you've got to start the workforce development piece before. That's part of what attracts people to the island. So you've got to have some kind of pipeline. And then, of course, if you build the pipeline and you start producing people at the end of the pipeline, they got to have something, or they're just going to take their talents and leave and go someplace else. So how do you start building that ecosystem and getting the right people in the room to have those kind of conversations and getting buy-in to that collective vision that's built?
Well, you consider what you have already, right? We have extraordinary assets here on Guam.
Mm-hmm.
A deep seaport net is, genuinely, uh, genuinely strategic to the United States and to this whole global theater. We have an international airport. We have the geography where we're America's doorstep to Asia. Uh,
Yes.
so what we lack isn't potential. What we need is modernization and follow through, right? Um,
Right.
and and that's what it is. I mean, just consider our port infrastructure. We've been running on borrowed time. And most recently, we procured, or we are going to procure. We got some grant funding for gantry cranes, um,
Right.
through federal funding to replace, what was built in the 1980s and was bought secondhand. Um, and we need to modernize these facilities and create the workforce to run them. And we need to also follow down those federal relationships to keep the investment coming. Because what the selling point is for all of us is that we have the bones of a very powerful economy.
Right.
We do. And that is why we're
Right.
successful whenever we go to the bond market, because there's so much potential to Guam, not only in what
Yes.
we have, but in where we are. And so going forward, the way that you create the investment lure and the talking points is you just need to. What we need more is the will and the strategy to finish building what we've got. And that's, it's easier said than done, but without having that as your base, your ground, it's hard to go forward. It's hard to convince others, unless you believe that your assets are absolutely sound, your potential is absolutely there, and it's just a matter of
Right.
having them come in, because it's all a matter of modernization and building up a workforce, um, to augment and complement and build upon what you have as a unique asset, not only in your port, the geography and topography of your port, the capacity of your airport, but also your geographic location. So there,
Yes.
just there's so much out there. It's just going to take some real thinking and getting partners to understand and buy into that greater vision, right? Not only for.
So let's talk about one of those opportunities, right? So one of the things that we've talked about on this podcast forum is the White House's Maritime Action Plan, and within the Maritime Action Plan, they talk about developing maritime prosperity zones to incentivize domestic and allied investment in U.S. maritime industries. It seems to me like Guam is a fantastic area to basically uh, appeal to the Secretary of Commerce to have Guam designated as a maritime prosperity zone and build a plan around what that looks like, a maritime prosperity zone, and how what's included and how it's interconnected, and of course, workforce development. And that seems like that could be the vision that everybody is working on. All right. So we've gone and we've established a maritime prosperity zone, and it's built on these pillars and under this umbrella. And this is the vision that's taken us forward so that we can get the investment in, so that we can use the maritime prosperity zone to uplift the economy. What do you think about that?
I think it's a real opportunity, and Guam should position itself as the Pacific hub for maritime logistics, readiness, and regional commerce. One of the things that have to be mindful of is while we may be eligible, eligibility isn't the same as designated, right? We know that Hawaii will compete
Yes,
as well. Hawaii will compete, and coastal states will compete. So Guam has to make its case, and we have a strong
right.
one. We're the westernmost anchor of the American maritime power in the Pacific. So we have the location, we have the port, we have military and commercial activity, but we need to be organized and intentional. And
Yes,
that means developing Guam as a maritime strategy that includes, we talked about modernization and workforce development, and having corresponding industry like ship repair and warehousing and all of that. But the job then of the Congress delegate would be to make sure that while we have all these competing interests, that Guam doesn't become an afterthought when those
yes,
zones are designated, and that we
yes,
position ourselves with all the different all the pluses that we have, all the things that are advantageous, put that at the front of the line, right, and help get us um, postured as being at the front of the line for consideration. It's going to take
yes,
a lot of work, but
absolutely.
the case can be made.
Yes. And we've got to have a plan. We've got to have a vision that we articulate that says this is what a maritime prosperity zone looks like in Guam, and here's why it's beneficial not just for Guam but for the United States of America and its national security as well as economic, shipping, etc. Interests. We've got to make that case. We've got
Yeah,
to make that case and put together the um, um, and articulate and put together that plan that says this is what it looks like and this is why um, you should be investing in this, and this is why it makes sense to invest in Guam because we can be this. Yeah.
can be done, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start with, like we do in all of these planning exercises that we have on Guam, sustainability exercises, and the different planning things that we do with Gita. It has to start with a vision. And once
Yes.
that vision is there, it has to be backed up. We have to have our data down. We have to have our vision down. We have to have the corresponding backup to why it's viable, including workforce development, and all that. But it's going to take a lot, and it's going to take a commitment of our people to the island. All those great minds out there, that are from here, that have advanced in careers and education, to believe that they can come back and help grow this vision. We're at,
Yes.
we're at that critical point again where, we really have to reinvent ourselves like we did when we were pushing for the organic DAC, like we did when we were pushing for the right to elect our own leadership. It's just,
Yes.
I mean, it's no different from those points in time in Guam's history where we said, what is going on? Who are we, and are we going to be okay?
Yes.
And we're asking those very elementary questions, and it's not too simple, and it's not so naive. It is absolutely relevant because it all comes down to my life, your life, and whether our kids will have a life here. If, hopefully they'll choose to have a life here. And that's what we want. We want home to be home.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about the nature of federal investment, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of times, federal investment on Guam often is concentrated inside the fence line, if you will, right? And it creates kind of a haves and have-nots, right? Haves are inside the fence line and have-nots outside of the fence line. How do we make sure that local businesses, local workers, local students and families benefit from, any kind of buildup or future defense spending, or even what we were just talking about, what a maritime prosperity zone looks like, right? So it's not just all the money is going uh, on inside the fence line. It's spread throughout the island of Guam for the benefit of everybody,
Yeah.
not just one or the other.
Yeah, and this is the heart of it. And it's where I would push hardest as a delegate to Congress, because too often the federal stays inside the fence line. I mean, let's be real. The money comes, the work happens behind the gate, and the family down the road never really sees the benefit. Um, this has to change. And what it'll mean is writing federal contracts and grants so that local businesses can actually compete and win. And if that means debundling, the contracts so that it isn't overwhelming, or the bond requirements can never be met by a local establishment, then those are the things that we can look at. Very practical ways of breaking things up. But it
I
also.
love that you said that. I love that you said that because you're one of the few people, Guam leaders, that I've said articulated kind of the heart of the matter, right? Getting to the contracting and acquisition practices of the Department of War. What if we got into the heart of those contracts so that work that was being done out here was done in such a manner through a public-private partnership, so that workforce development, training, and other things that were beneficial to the people of Guam were written into the congressional language, for the benefit of the people outside of the fence, as well as making sure that the needs and requirements of the people on inside the fence line are also be taken care of by that contract. You really got to get to the heart of the contractual language and understand what contracts are being let and where, and what agencies are controlling those contracts. So I'm really glad that I heard you say that.
I'm so glad that you emphasize that, because the workforce programs really need to be tied to real jobs, so that that kid from Dededo can train for a career, whether it's in shipbuilding or any skilled
Yes,
trade that builds a life here, right? And also it means that the infrastructure that serves the whole island, in fact, serves the whole island, and we're not making
yes,
it just for how to increase power generation through, nuclear modular reactors for the military's needs for its defense system, right? There has to be a broader consideration and application for Guam, because this buildup will reshape Guam either way, right? Either way, it's going to reshape.
yes,
So we have to make sure, and that's the job of the delegate, to get in there into the nuts and bolts of the discussion, to make sure that those policies uh, reshape things for the people of Guam, right? Who actually call it home, and that the consideration isn't for only what makes it best and most efficient and most effective uh, for the military and the military infrastructure, right? Into the island that the military also shares.
right, right. And you
We
know, if you're a prime contractor who's won one of these large contracts supporting the Department of War, and you have operations or activities out here in Guam or Micronesia,
Mhm.
it would be nice to hire local or whatever, but you want to be ready on day one.
Mhm.
So it drives you to kind of do this reach back to the states of, these contractor mercenaries, if you will,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
are paid high price to come out here, but they're not really tied here. They're out here for maybe a year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever, and they're rotating out. Those prime contractors aren't going to develop a training program or apprenticeship program or hire a certain percentage of local people unless it's in the contract, unless that language is in the contract that's been let by the Department of War that directs them to do stuff like that. They're not going to do it. They're going to reach back and they're going to continue to bring in the talent that they need to ensure that they meet their contractual requirements. That's where we have to get into the meat and the nuts and bolts of these contracts that are being let so that we can drive the right kind of language in them so it benefits everybody, not just one or the other. So
And you just expounded on what it means to have a stronger voice and a clearer vision. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
yes.
Precisely what I'm talking about. And story with you, I was at a one time, and one of she's a cousin of my husband's, and her see, on Guam we explain things that way. Not my relative, but but he was lamenting the fact that he cannot afford a $2 million bond, but he's perfectly
Mm,
capable of securing a contract because he has the expertise, he has the infrastructure, what's required in his business, and he has access to sufficient um, employees to
right.
complete these contracts. But he cannot afford the $2 million bond
Dollar bond.
for the
Yeah.
contract. And he's saying, he's saying, cousin, he calls me cousin, although he's not really my cousin. But he says, cousin, he's like, I can do this. And this was after a couple of beers, by the way. But he says, cousin, I can do this. And he said the irony of it is that when these contractors leave Guam because it either doesn't work out or they don't think it is worth their while, when they leave Guam, um, he absorbs their employees anyways. So he sees
Yes.
get dried up, and then they come looking for a job and they come work for me. And he said,
Yes.
I could so do that. And so, I mean, that's I'm sort of, I'm not making light, but I'm just telling you in a very practical way how some people are affected, where they're like, I can, I'm very much able to do this, but I just don't have the chance because it's cost prohibitive for me. So
Right.
how can we work it within the contracting scheme to allow things to be broken down, not everything, but where it's practical and uh, not risk adverse. Um, where can you do that? And those
And
are
incentivize the contractors to do have training programs, to have internships, to have apprenticeship programs, and those kind of things. So it's built in, so it gives an on ramp for local people to be able to contribute to the overall um, defense effort, and then over time you get a chance to grow that up. And what it does, ironically, is it works better for everybody because the people you hire are going to be people who stay here. They're not going to be going back to the States, to their home, you know, in a year or 2 years or 4 years. So it cuts down on a lot of the rotations and a lot of the instability that happens with a lot of these contracts out here. You'll probably be able to um, also hire people for a lower cost because to get somebody to incentivize them to come all the way out here to Guam from North Carolina or Ohio or wherever, you've got to throw a lot of money at them to come out here for a short amount of time.
yeah.
Just a percentage of that for a person who lives here at Guam would be great money, and they have more of a tie-in. There would be more stability. There would be better readiness outcomes on those contracts. So everybody wins doing
Mm,
it that way.
totally agree.
It just needs to get that verbiage just needs to get into the right kind of contracting language to make it happen.
Right. That's what I see, and I'm so glad you agree. I mean, it's innovation. It's like thinking outside the box. What is going to be a logical solution to an obstacle for so many people locally? You know,
Yes, yes. So you already alluded to it a little bit earlier, but your campaign talks a lot about affordability. What federal levers do you see that can actually reduce the pressures on Guam families, whether it be housing cost pressures, shipping cost pressures, healthcare, energy, food, wages, or small business costs? What kind of levers do you see from the federal side that you can kind of push and pull in order to make a difference in terms of affordability for local families?
well, you've mentioned a lot of what I believe are the levers that matter, right? Shipping, housing, healthcare, energy, food costs, veterans benefits, Medicaid,
Yes, veterans benefits. Yeah,
small business
that's a
support.
that's a huge one.
Yeah. So for Guam, as we all know, affordability is affected by distance and federal policy, right? The shipping costs affect almost everything we buy. And our healthcare costs are affected by reimbursement rates and provider shortages, reimbursement rates like with Medicaid. Um,
Yes,
the housing costs are affected by construction costs, plus land availability and infrastructure and also federal investment. I believe that what the delegate needs to do is understand how these issues connect, right? Affordability is not one bill or one speech. It really is a sustained effort to reduce the pressure on families from every direction possible. But I think the biggest um, hurdle that we're going to have, what we're going to have to work on, is how do we deal with the shipping costs, because that seems to be the overarching trigger for the cost increases on Guam. So
mm, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just, yeah, that was me amening from the congregation.
yeah, and there's a lot of discussion about do you just repeal the Jones Act and it all goes away? And the answer is no. We already have
Right.
exceptions to the Jones Act on Guam, and we know that because we have a foreign built vessel that does service Guam, so that the American made vessel uh, criteria is not applicable to Guam anyways. But we have other hurdles, our distance, our demand,
Yes.
right? The demand for goods to come to Guam it makes it harder for people to invest in this route. So there are a lot of things that have to be factored in, and there's no one solution to reducing shipping costs. But there has to be a consideration from the federal government, much the same way that they subsidize or ease the effect of the cost of living on Guam for their own military personnel. Those
Right.
sorts of other considerations need to be factored into how we address Guam, because it is so devastating, really, for us to live so remote. And I feel sometimes I compare people who move off of Guam and what they're able to have for the same dollars. Um, what they're able to get with money, like what money in
Yes.
certain part of the U.S. will buy you versus what it'll buy you in Guam, and it's really tough. I mean, it's the difference between children drinking 4 glasses of milk or 1 glass of milk. It
Yes.
I mean that's what it comes down to, and should we have to have those concessions because we live on Guam? For a child who should be drinking 4 glasses of milk, I say no, it shouldn't be a concession that we make because we live here. So again, I'm oversimplifying it, but you get the gist of what I'm talking about.
Oh, I definitely get the gist of it. And with a lot of people that I've talked to, one of the things that I have pointed out is that that's probably Guam's um, biggest vulnerability. A lot of
Mhm,
people focus on the threat from China or North Korea here in Guam, but our biggest vulnerability out here is logistics. Um,
yes.
Logistics is by far, it's not even close, our
Mhm,
biggest vulnerability. And, um, you know, this past semester, spring semester, was my first time working as an adjunct professor up at University of Guam. And I was, blessed to be able to teach a special topics course where my students were looking at the Guam Transshipment Task Force report and looking at how to address a lot of the issues brought up in there and how to implement some of the recommendations from there. And the two
mhm,
models that they talked about in the Guam Transshipment Task Force, Model 2 and 3, one
mhm,
being kind of value added activity of, some kind of repair and manufacturing, advanced packaging, or something like that. But
mhm,
also Model 3, which I kind of call Amazon for American companies that are trying to get into Asian markets,
mhm,
pre-positioning warehouses or whatever here so that when the online order comes, it's pulled from a Guam warehouse to go into Asia and vice versa. For Asian companies who are looking to get into the United States market, um, that online order is being pulled from a warehouse on Guam to get into the supply chain to go to the United States. Again,
mhm,
that's us leveraging this fence that we sit on as a bridge between the United States and Asia, and innovating, you know, through the constraints of how we can get more shipping in and out of here, and how we can leverage, the benefits of our geography and stuff. So there are ways. It's not just like you said, repealing the Jones Act. There's enough other things that we need to work on, as well as enough wiggle room in what's set up right now to allow us to be successful.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So if you had to name three things that Guam must get right over the next decade, what would they be?
Well, the first is affordability and the cost of living. We were just talking about that because our families can't make it here, and nothing else matters if they can't survive on Guam. The second it would be economic diversification, building
Hmm.
durable businesses and industries so that we're not hostage to this boom that we're now experiencing with the military investment into Guam. And three, that we have to get right is keeping our people, especially our young people, by making Guam a place where they can live and feel that they don't have to leave. This idea
Yes.
of being priced out of paradise it's just it's heart-wrenching when you think that that's really what a lot of people are faced with right now. So if we get
Yes.
those things right, then I believe everything else becomes possible. But if we get them wrong, we'll be having the same painful conversation a decade from now. And I talk about my grandchildren, ages 5 to 21, and I don't want that for them. I hope that they can choose to have a home on Guam. If that's their choice, of course, I'm not going to hold them hostage, although I'd like to. But uh, but we would want to, and so I think that that's it. It's the affordability, economic diversification, and reversing the brain drain.
Yeah.
keeping us from being priced out of our paradise.
Yes. So if you were elected, what would success look like at the end of your first term? How would you define that? Explain what that looked like if you were successful in your first term.
Um, Success for me would mean Guam is better positioned, better heard, and better prepared when we deal with Washington. I want to see a more balanced federal relationship, where we have real progress on affordability and more resources for the local infrastructure. Um, I'd like for us to finally see greater support for our veterans and their families, and
Yes.
and a clear strategy for economic diversification. But
Yes.
at this time, especially now during the military buildup, I want Guam to be taken seriously in the national conversations about the Pacific and about national security and sustainability and our maritime development,
Yes.
including the health and of rare mineral resources from the waters in our region. Because for me, success would be that Guam is no longer just reacting in Washington, and that we're actually helping to shape what Washington does for Guam.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I want us to finally feel that they have a delegate that not only shows up, but that did all the work possible that delegate could do, and that the delegate fought for Guam every single day. I mean, that's what I see as success. That would be, my chapter after the first year, after the first term in office, if I should be elected to Washington. And that's what brings people like me into this realm of reaching out. It's not so much that we believe we have something to give. It's that we feel that we have to give something more, that we have
Yes.
to give something more. And so it's never personal. It's not about somebody doing a bad job, or it's not calling out any one person. It's calling out the fact that not enough is being done for our island. And therefore
Yes.
therefore take the plunge, that leap of faith that people will hear us, that they'll trust us, that our message is consistent with their message and their visions, and give us, the dignity and the precious vote that they can afford. Because I mean, that's been my whole life. It's I only know service, and there are many people like me. I mean, not people that necessarily go into politics, but many people like me, and includes you, Rob. People who genuinely care about finding solutions and working to make things right. That's all it's about. It's a very genuine place, a very honest place, and that's kind of where I put myself. It's like, I have this to offer, and I really believe that we need to move in this direction, and I want the chance to do it, and I'll be good for it if given that
I
chance.
love it. I love it, Senator. I've been doing a lot of amening from the congregation as you've been
Yeah.
talking,
It's
but
real
you,
though, isn't it? I mean, this is just so real, and people don't get it.
yeah,
Politicians get a bad rap, but if you're Guam is very unique, and we don't have many opportunities to just get in there and make a difference. And when you feel that you can make a difference, it's like, jump in. The day that I decided that I want to run for delegate, I'd been a senator for 8 years and took a break from politics, right? Just I had to work on a personal project.
hmm
I took a short break, and the day that I decided that no, 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 it's time to do something. um, my husband came home, and he's like, "Hey, how was your day? How did your meeting go?" And I said to him, "Darling, I want to run for Washington delegate. That's where I believe I need to be effective. And his only answer was, "You should," and that was it. We haven't had a discussion.
Wow.
And this is a husband who has a job here that we will sort out our lives. Um, but it was that important for all of us to say, "You should just please just do it." And so that's where I am today. And it's a very humbling thing. It's a halfway terrifying experience, but some of us just have all good intentions, and that I can say no more.
Yes, ma'am. I tell you, this has been a fantastic conversation, as I knew it was going to be. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we close out here, I really want to just kind of hand you the mic and talk to the audience, what message you want to leave them with before we wrap up here.
Thank you so much. My parting message during this podcast is that Guam's future is worth fighting for. Please don't give up on Guam, because I haven't, and I won't. And I know that times are hard. The bills are high and the future can feel uncertain. And a lot of our loved ones have left our island. But I also know what this island is capable of, because I spent my life building it as well. And we sit at one of the most strategically important spots, and we have people whose generosity is unmatched. And we have every reason to believe our best days are ahead if we choose to build them. And I'm not asking you to be optimistic for no reason. I'm asking you to help me do the work, because together I believe we can make Guam a place that our children inherit with pride, the same pride that we've held in this island, and find a place where they never have to leave. So to all of you, God bless. Thank you for listening to my message. Please, I'm asking you for your vote. I can't get to the Washington delegate position without your help, but I promise you that I will do what I've only done, and that is give it my best, my sincerest effort, but mostly give it my absolute effort and hard work and heart. So, Viva Guahan. Situs Masi.
Viva. Senator, if people want to contact you or contact your campaign, they want more information or they want to talk to you or share something with you, is there some place that they can contact you or check out your platform or anything?
Yes, and thank you for asking. You can find me on Torres for Guam. I have a website. I have an Instagram account and a Facebook account. So if you look for Torres for Guam, my platform is on a website. You can find all the information and also link to us to get information or to make contact with us. But I truly appreciate it, and I've tried to put a lot of content out there. Sometimes the best thing is just to have a one-on-one chat, and I'm always good for that. I spend my time chatting with old people, young people, family members, strangers at the supermarket. So I'm always good for it, and I always appreciate anybody that loves our island enough to care enough to vote and make your precious vote. So I encourage you to please do that. Sizus Masi.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for your time and for
Thank you.
sharing your story, your vision, and your perspective on Guam's future. This was a very important conversation. Um, we covered everything from public service to affordability, sustainability, economic diversification, maritime opportunity, and how Guam can position itself not just to survive the future, but to shape it. And I really like your message about wanting to contribute in DC to help better shape Guam's future. Thank you again for being a guest on the Innovate Guam podcast. To my audience, I hope you were inspired and learned something. I certainly did today. Remember to follow me on all social media platforms, including Substack, Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date on all future episodes. And don't forget to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of each month. And remember, see you next time. And whether you're at work, at home, or at play, always innovate. Thank you.